Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Emerald City Hockey's Seattle Kraken podcast.
All right, RJ, I've got a quick question for you.
Mm-hmm.
You ready for this?
Yes.
And I apologize in advance if this makes you sad or hurts you in any way, okay?
Okay.
But if the Kraken do something and you're not there to witness it, did it happen?
I was having such a good day, Dylan. Of course, you knew that, of course.
Yes.
Uh, you're gonna throw the philosophical questions at me to start the podcast, as you always do.
Yeah.
I've had this kind of working theory, just growing up in being a hockey fan and everything, that the further I am away from events, the better they go. And this seems to add some evidence to that one. Things tend to go wrong when I'm there, when I'm closely paying attention, all that sort of thing. But I guess I wasn't there to see it in person. Did it even happen? I don't know for sure. I can't confirm.
No,
Yeah.
it's one of those things, right? Like there's like that whole, philosophy and thought of from lots of top psychologists about how all of our brains are our own separate little realities because the only thing that is true to us is what we can experience and conceive ourselves or our own little universes walking around. And so there's probably something there, but we won't fall down that rabbit hole. I was just bummed for you that you missed the home opener. You miss him getting the first goal. Like you've been there for everything else
I know.
through all the bad. You were there, and then this happened. And I was just like, oh my god, I feel so bad for him.
Yeah,
He's
but
just at home dying on a stream.
oh yeah, that was a fun stream to do. Looking back at it, had a few moments struggling there with some coughing, but it was all right. And on the flip side, I am happy for you that game could make it into your own little personal universe, that you were there to experience it. Certainly, for everything you've done, from a distance too, where, yes, you haven't been like at all the things, all the practices, all the games and everything, but, you've done a ton behind the scenes from a distance without getting to enjoy a lot of the fun stuff that comes with going to everything every day. I'm definitely glad you got to experience that. So, yeah, glad you were in the building and that you can tell me about it. You can tell everyone about it. That awesome experience.
Yeah, so I mean, we should probably just go ahead and get into it because let's be real, this is what everyone wants to hear about. This episode's going to be Matty Beniers basically the entire time. There's nothing. There's a couple other things we could talk about, but this is the main topic of this week. Um, I mean, just it's incredible to me, RJ. Like we knew the Kraken were struggling. They were not great in the standings, all that stuff. But it had not quite sunken into me just how like okay the players were. Like how having a difference making guy around can not only, do they shine, but also elevate the players around them. And how having somebody who has that ability, like they can just stand out. You know what I mean? And it's an unfortunate thing, and I hate kind of like saying it, but like Matty Beniers just comes in, and it's clear that he is just a better hockey player than just about everybody else on this team.
Yeah, the skill gap is apparent. You see that kind of high end talent that the Kraken just didn't really have before, and how it can uplift, how it can elevate everyone. Just the energy that hasn't been there, honestly, for the last, you know, 15, 20, 30. How far back do we want to look, really? Hasn't been there for a long time. It's just all of a sudden there again, because you see everyone believes, and it's the players, the fans, it's everyone in the building. You can see the kind of skill that Matty Beniers has, and what it does for everyone.
Yeah, it's I think I said the word otherworldly hustle the other night, last night in one of my tweets because it's true though. Like he brings a level of hustle and determination and grit and all of that stuff, on top of just being a really skilled guy, somebody who can shoot the puck and score from many different places on the ice and distribute it well. His first assist is on a no-look cross-ice pass where he sucks in a defender and tape to tapes it right to Donato. You know what I mean? Like, these are things that we have not seen from the Kraken, and there's a lot of stuff to get into there that I really want to, because I was noticing a lot of the same talking points about him from the other members of the media, whether it be their questions to Hakstol or Matty himself last night, or just the things that they were tweeting and stuff. And I do want to get into that in a second, but before we do, just talk more about his game. Um, in a lot of ways, he's the perfect guy for all of these old school hockey guys that just want, oh, you just go out there and you give it 110%, and you drive the net and you do all those like dirty things and all the hustle plays and all that stuff that they've been saying that this new generation of player, the Trevor Zegrases of the world, lack. And so I find it very interesting that he does all that stuff, and he does remind me of kind of like an old school hockey player. You know what I mean? Like a Phil Esposito or something, where he's just going to go out there and like just do all this stuff and just kind of handle it all himself. But at the same time, he's, oh, it's overtime. I'm gassed. I'm going to just juggle this puck while I gain body position on someone and then drive the net and draw a penalty. Like, he's like this perfect old school, new school combination, and I love to see it.
I know exactly what you mean. And, we've seen with a lot of these younger players coming in, younger forwards too, they can be really flashy. You talk about Trevor Zegras, do a lot of that stuff, but maybe their 200-foot game isn't, where it can be. And, other aspects of the game, they're not as necessarily committed defensively. And so you get kind of the old school hockey people look, oh yeah, they could do some flashy moves or whatever. You can't say that about Beniers. He's got no real knock on his game there. And in fact, it looks like he kind of prioritizes the defensive side. The offensive moves, the flashiness, that's just a bonus. I mean, it's just hardwired into him to think defense first. And you can tell that by the way he positions himself whenever he's on the ice. As low as he'll go in the defensive zone, always making sure to be an outlet there for his defenseman. How high he stays in the offensive zone, making sure he's the first one back, that hustle back. It's just this blend that I mean, when's the last time we've seen this out of a player this young?
Crosby. I mean, he's the one I keep going back to because it just is, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
he was just that kind of freak or whatever. And obviously Beniers doesn't have Crosby level skill and all that kind of stuff. As we're saying, Beniers is kind of next level to everybody on the Kraken. Trust us, there is a next level beyond that
Yes.
too, where you start really getting into like the superstars. Um, but yeah, it's been a while since we've had somebody like him that's been so disciplined. I am curious though, because there were many moments last night where I felt like he could have really gone into the offensive zone more and maybe tried to make some more stuff happen. And I thought he was maybe playing a little too cautious, worrying about defense. Like, at some point, no, you do have two defensemen back there, and it is their job to deal with that. Like, you don't have to. It's great when you help out and you're there for it, but like, know that as a forward, your job is kind of to create offense. Do you think he's playing that way? Is that just me?
No, I definitely see what you're talking about. And I mean, it's tough because you feel like, okay, do you really want to coach that out of him?
Oh, yeah.
Because, most coaches would kill to have a young player with those kind of instincts, to be even more cautious than you need to be defensively. It's just such a rare thing to see. So I almost don't want to complain about it. I mean, it really depends what his ultimate role is going to be on the team, and what they eventually need. And it's hard to tell that right now because this is kind of this skeleton crew of what's going to be going forward. You've got just a few of the bones here, but you're going to have to build around a lot of it to get to what the team is going to be ultimately once they're really competitive. And then you'll see kind of what do you need there. Maybe you do have an elite scoring winger or something that kind of provides a lot of that offense that is more aggressive in his positioning and allows Matty to keep playing that way defensively. But maybe you don't, and maybe you need him to take a few more chances. But for the time being, I think it's fine. Just let him play the way he does. But he is leaving some offense on the table.
Hmm. He really is. It's kind of interesting. And to be clear, everybody, because we're going to talk about stuff. I'm going to talk about his line mates and stuff. I won't speak for you, RJ, but I'm going to say a lot of stuff, and it's going to be just know that it's coming from a place of we've entered a new chapter of Kraken hockey. Matty Beniers is here. We've seen what he can do now against NHL competition. We know kind of what the expectations and bars are for him, and now it's about all the things I'm going to bring up. They might sound like they're negatives, and I don't want to like dampen the buzz everybody's got from the huge win last night and Beniers' first goal and all the stuff that he's been doing. Just know that I'm trying to look ahead at like how do we maximize what this kid can do? How can we maximize his role in the team? How can we put him in the best place to succeed? And how does this affect the Kraken moving forward? Because at the end of the day, there's 7 games left, and the
Yeah.
Kraken are nowhere close to a playoff spot. So those are still the focuses. All the stuff that we had before Matty showed up, those are still the focuses. But having him and seeing what he can do has changed a lot of things.
Hmm.
And so that's the stuff that I want to kind of talk about is the change that makes, and the fact that he is now the franchise cornerstone. And so all decisions kind of have to be made around him.
Well,
And so
hmm.
just know moving ahead, everybody, that we're going to be talking about stuff. And if we're talking about his line mates maybe not being the best for him right now, we're not just trying to do the Kraken like, oh, everything's terrible, whatever, because that's the way it's been a lot of this year. It's more so just about like, okay, we love this kid, we absolutely love him and everything that he can do. Now we want to make sure he can be as successful as possible for him and this team.
Exactly. And I think it's great that you went out and explained that too, because I have a little bit of an idea just from reading a couple tweets from you earlier today about where you might be going with this. But I think that's a good disclaimer too. You talk about, this season, and it is what it is. There's 7 games left. The Kraken are where they are. And that's just kind of where it's going to be. It's not, about the big picture. But when you do talk about the big picture, you have to talk about, being competitive. It's time basically to get serious here because
Mhm.
you're going to want Matty Beniers to be on a competitive team and be in the right spot to be competing not just to make the playoffs but ultimately for a Stanley Cup, because I know that's the goal ultimately of everyone in the organization. And so, it starts now, and it starts with building the right things around him the right way.
Yeah, exactly. And there's only so many things we can say about how great he is anyway, and how awesome last night was too. Like we could talk for an hour, but like would that be the best podcast? I don't know. Everybody's already celebrated so much on Twitter and everything.
Probably do pretty
Um,
well download wise. I don't know. Rave about Matty Beniers for an hour.
just to do that for the hour, but I just can't help it. And I know you can't either. It's
Yep.
the GM brains in us that want to focus on this stuff, and the coaching brains and everything. I will say this to sing his praises and kind of dig into it. I think Hackstall, he didn't say a lot in his media availability last night, but the one thing that he kept coming back to as people were asking about, you're putting this 19-year-old out there in overtime situations. You're giving him the second shot in a shootout. You're doing all this stuff. What has made you trust him and everything? And you could tell Hacksaw is trying really hard not to give the kid a big head. Like he's
Hmm.
he's 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 being careful about singing his praises too much. But the one thing he kept coming back around to, and I totally understand why he's saying this, is fundamentals. He's solid in all his fundamentals, and he's solid in all 3 zones, and that's true. That's just the truth of Matty Beniers. That's what makes him great. Whether it's the fact that he's one of the top 3 most fluid skaters on the Kraken because his hips are just incredible. The way he can move them, or and just shift back and forth, move his weight around on his legs back and forth like it's nothing. Do these stop starts and all the quick cuts he does, or it's the hand-eye coordination and the puck skills we've seen that rivals certainly anybody on the Kraken so far this year, or just the hard shot he has that's up there with, it's maybe not quite McCann level, but up there with like a Sprong already. And so it is one of those things where Matty Beniers is just the complete package all the way around. and it's good to see Hakstol like acknowledging that right away.
Yes, definitely. And Hackstall has had glowing things to say about Beniers since he first arrived. And I like how he's handled that. I guess the media too, again, trying not necessarily not to have get too big a head, because again, I think Matty's a humble guy. He's not going to let coaches'
Right.
comments go to his head, and I think Hackstall knows that. But I like he kind of started it out, with that first practice, just talking about how great his attitude was, his
Mhm.
work ethic, his poise, that sort of thing, where just he feels comfortable out here, and that's what he, chose to compliment. And I think that was good and appropriate for the time. And now that he's gotten some games under his belt too, talking about the fundamentals, of course, the things that coaches like, and that sort of thing. And then, you kind of build around that basically. But I do like how Hackstall has kind of treated that as far as, talking to the media.
Yeah, exactly. And last night was the first time where I felt like he was really talking about his game and
Hmm.
not just his, oh, he's a real intelligent kid or he's a real nice kid. He's a real level-headed kid. Like last night was the first time he's like, no, his fundamentals are solid everywhere.
Yep.
Like, and he earns those opportunities.
Yep.
And so it was cool.
And that's how Hackstall is impressed kind of at the next level of just like, oh, he looks good in practice versus, okay, yeah, no, I really trust the kid now.
Yeah, everything's good. So, um, I guess just because we're already on the media thing, one of the things that got to me, as I alluded to earlier, was all of the media seemed very obsessed with this I with kind of two things. One, his skill and all that kind of stuff for obvious reasons, and his creativity, and I understand that kind of fascination. But the second thing was his his age. Everybody was
Hmm.
very, very obsessed with essentially his age, and it, whether that be Hackstall using a 19-year-old the way he did, like I was saying before, or that a 19-year-old would feel confident playing the way Beniers was playing in the NHL. And I heard this in questions from multiple media members during the media availabilities, saw it on Twitter from them, whether it was during the game or post game, and I won't name names just because there was so many of them. Like
Right.
it was almost all of them. And everybody was just like so focused on like, wow, a 19-year-old kid to come in and do this and whatever. And I, I don't know. I kept coming around to this thing that was ultimately his age to me isn't the story. It's the fact that he's the real deal that should be the story. Like
Hmm.
I want the focus to be on Matty Beniers as an NHL player is a really good NHL player who's going to just get better from here somehow. Like we all know he's going to get better, even though he's already, one of the best players on the team. And age is just one of those things. Yeah, he's young, but I also feel like we're at this point in the NHL where things have changed, and I felt like the media viewpoint that they were all taking was very old school in the sense that, oh, for an NHL, a young kid to come into the NHL and try a between the legs move or to juggle the puck or whatever, it's like, this insane thing. But I'm like, but no, look around the NHL. Like we're seeing this from every team's young top prospect. Like that's just what the NHL is now, and it's for two reasons. One, the most talked about reason has been these kids have all grown up in the social media age. They've seen all the sick moves. They've all then tried to do them from the time they were 10 or 12, right? And so by now it's muscle memory for them. The idea of bringing out a between the legs move in a game setting is nothing for them because they've practiced it for a decade now, just fooling around in their garage or whatever, right? So there's that aspect that I don't know that the media always pays attention to, but they will bring it up at times. The other thing is the NHL has changed in the last, decade to be so much more skill based. Like it wants to reward plays like this. It wants to encourage it, and it lines up better with all of the other leagues below it. Whether it's major, junior, or the NCAA, players can just import their game from whatever development league they were in before into the NHL now in a way that they couldn't before because the NHL before was obsessed with this whole you got to be big, you got to be physical. We're going to have these 6'6" goons running around that are just going to grind any rookie down into dust. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like think about Sidney Crosby when he first came into the league and the infamous first Flyers game, right? Where he's just got this guy that's the size of a house just beating on him the entire game regardless of whether or not it's going to draw a penalty, just because that's the way you slowed down kids back in the day or whatever. But those players don't exist in the NHL anymore. They just don't. It's a lot more like Major Junior or the NCAA. A Trevor Zegras, a Matty Beniers, import whatever player you want, even a Tomas Hertl, right? Going back that far,
Yep.
just to bring it
I'm
reference
glad you
for
brought
you.
him up.
Yeah, they just play the same game that they were playing before, but now just in the NHL. So there isn't this like, oh, it's going to take 2 years to learn how the game is played and relearn how you have to play the game around all these other players and what the systems are and whatever. It's the same. It's faster. The guys are bigger and they're stronger. But at the end of the day, if you're an elite player, you're going to be an elite player pretty quick because you don't have to do anything different. You can just be yourself. And I don't think that the media has really caught on to that for whatever reason, even though we've seen it now for a good 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, you make a good observation there, and I noticed that too when watching back, some of the media availabilities yesterday. I think there was even a comment like, 19-year-olds just don't do that in overtime. The NHL talking about the between the legs thing. I've just, if you've been watching the league, I mean, you can see examples where they've done this for actually quite a while now. Have played like that. I remember, and I'm glad you brought him up. Tomas Hertl, going between the legs, for his fourth goal of the game, and that was. Gosh, that was back in 2013 that he did that. That
And he
was,
was
yeah.
it wasn't like, oh, he's got like years of NHL experience and now he's gotten to this point or anything.
No,
You know
it,
what I mean?
it was, I believe, within his first 5 NHL games.
Yeah,
And that was 9 years ago.
yeah.
Younger players have been doing this kind of thing for a while now. When if you have that skill, you can make it work. Because as you mentioned, you don't have to do anything differently now. There's not someone who's looking to take your head off. And thankfully that's the case. I mean, thank goodness that is the case. That's great for the sport. That's what we want to see. Yeah, I think I agree with you. The story isn't so much that, he's at 19, he's able to do this sort of thing, but look at how complete of a player he is. Not just at 19, wherever, but just at all, that he's this complete of a player, because you just don't see that very often from someone, regardless of their age, that can play this well, in every facet of the game, offensively, defensively, that's as well-rounded as he is. And that, I guess, the age is just a factor because, at 19, he's going to get better. He's just going to get
Mhm.
even better. I mean, maybe if he's 28, 29, it's different because you're like, okay, this is what he is. But, that's what's so exciting, I guess, is that he's going to get better.
Yeah, it wasn't framed that way. And
No, it wasn't.
it was just really weird to me. I was just like, okay, whatever. I'm like, that's not the story. The story is that the Kraken have like their second best player now.
Hmm.
I would argue first, but I don't want to set expectations crazy high after only 2 games. And they have the player that, barring who they approach in free agency, this guy is going to be their best player next year. Like over the course of next season, he's going to develop and turn into that. There's just kind of no way around it. He's just more solid fundamentally than everybody else. He is just better at the sport of hockey than most players on the ice when he is out there. And I'm like, that is the story, and that's the thing that we should be talking about, is that he's just fantastic.
Yep. And I like Maddie's answer too about the between the legs thing, where he's just like, yeah, I mean, I've tried it a bunch at Michigan. Like I've done this and it's worked for me in the past, I mean,
Yeah.
and then he got all shy, like, oh, well, it doesn't look the best when it doesn't work. But I
Well,
mean,
that's the thing. All these things are just tools, and the
right.
young kids have bigger tool chests now. Like because they've messed around and tried all this stuff because they were able to see it. Like there is just elements of that, and then the league changing around it to be more open to it. I mean, for crying out loud, Brian Boyle had a between the legs goal earlier this season for the Penguins.
The old dogs can learn new tricks, eh?
They apparently can, so maybe we should still talk about 28-year-olds, like they could get better at all that stuff because he's like what, 38?
Yeah, something like that.
Not only that, he's what, 6'7" or something too.
Hmm.
So
Got a lot of
he was
room between the legs there.
yeah, it was like the most awkward thing I've ever seen, but it was also the most glorious between the legs goal I've ever seen too. So I just wanted to get my media rant out of the way there because it was just something that really bothered me. And if if any of them had bothered to talk to me, I had left before
I was
then.
gonna
I
say
should
you
say.
you get the press pass for one game and you already got a media rant going on the podcast.
I know, and I should go into morning skate tomorrow. Just be like, blah blah blah. You guys are all crazy. You guys are all so old. That'll make me friends, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. That's how you win friends and influence people in the hockey
Yeah.
world. Just call them old, call them dinosaurs.
Yep.
That'll be great.
All right. So the other aspect of Matty Beniers' game that we haven't talked about yet is his brain. Obviously, he's a smart kid. Anybody who listens to him can see that or hear that or whatever you want to describe. Their own personal universe will perceive it as such. That's what to say. He's very intelligent, pre-med in college. Obviously, that takes some levels of book smarts, but it's clear that he understands the street smart aspects of this job too, and that's the PR game and media stuff and how he deals with and approaches any sort of fan interactions and all that kind of stuff. Like those things are all very important too, and it's clear that he has a very strong working understanding of how he should carry himself and how he should approach those things, and he comes across very genuine about it. I have no reason to think that he isn't sincere when he says and does the things he does, and I think that that's awesome, and I'm very happy to have that for the Kraken. But on the ice, he's also very very intelligent with his hockey sense and the things that he's going to try to do. He is creative, and again, this is one of those things with this younger generation of players, that they think a little different. They're maybe it's like college football to the NFL, RJ, where everybody just runs spread offenses now and it's all whatever, and so you just kind of get these quarterbacks that just wheel and deal and they're just going to escape the pocket and they're just going to make a play happen or whatever. Maybe it's similar type of situation where systems aren't really run the same way in major junior as they used to be and as the NHL is. And so you're seeing guys that'll just roam around in the offensive zone, just try to get open, just play their own game and try to create offense, and it leads to this level of creativity amongst them that they're now importing into the NHL. But it's clear that Matty Beniers is trying to do different things. He's not trying to fit a system when he's out there with the Kraken. And it was kind of obvious to me that his line mates aren't on that same page with him. There's plenty of times he was breaking away, he was finding open spots, and they were not prepared for him to be where he was.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's not a wrong observation, and I think you get that with younger players too. And I think it makes me think of the time when we talked about Marty St. Louis coming in as a coach of Montreal and talking about systems versus concepts, and how
Yeah.
systems you're kind of just locked in. You got to be in this certain area, you got to be doing this exact thing. It doesn't give you a lot of creativity to think. Versus concepts in his mind is okay, you kind of generally want to do this, but figure it out yourself how you get there. And I think you have these young players that are given a lot more creativity to do that sort of thing. And Beniers certainly, and also when you grow up with it too, when you grow up with it, when that's kind of been the coaching all throughout your youth and everything too, it almost comes second nature. And you can see that in the way Beniers plays versus some of these older players that, maybe just, even if they were given a little bit more creativity recently, they didn't necessarily have that growing up. It's not second nature to them. It's kind of like, having someone in their, 40s, 50s, even if they're really, tech literate and everything, it still wasn't something they grew up with since they were a child. And so there's always kind of still that gap there. But yeah, you point out Matty Beniers' line mates. There are definitely times where Beniers is thinking on a certain wavelength, and his line mates, for whatever reason, are not on that wavelength. And I'll
Mhm.
let you kind of dive into that and explain, why and basically your thoughts on that.
Yeah, the one that really stands out is Jordan Eberle, just to get this out of the way. It's the one that really stands out. And I I talked about this forever ago. Like it was probably December when I talked about Jordan Eberle being a player that fits a system and wants a system. Like that, like every time he's been successful in his career, it's been on teams that have had a coach that have a very set system that tells you where to be and when to be there. and that's just the way that Jordan Eberle has been. And so it's kind of odd that you then put him on the wing. And I get the idea of, okay, he's your like most veteran winger. He's a very good winger. He can score, all that stuff. You want to match him with the rookie. He can kind of help him along and do that stuff. But it's so obvious that Matty is a guy that's going to go out there and generate offense just by making plays. And he's just going to take what the defense is going to give him, and he's going to create things on his own. And it just doesn't gel with the type of player that Jordan Eberle has been this year. And we've talked about that. That's probably why Jordan Eberle has struggled a lot this year, is that the Kraken haven't had a set system. He's There's been many line mates that Eberle has been matched with throughout the course of this year where he's been off from them just because he's trying to do something kind of the same way every time, and they're maybe trying to create something differently. So I don't see this as a long-term marriage. I don't see how it can work because it's not already. Um, and I think it's kind of odd that they're paired with each other beyond just the fact that, like I said, he's like your highest on the chain of leadership potentially right now, besides Yanni Gord, but you can't match up center and center, and he's this veteran goal scorer, so you kind of want to match him with the young guy. I get that, but again, maybe that's maybe just a little too old school. Beniers doesn't necessarily need that, based on what we're seeing. And so it's one of those I'd love to see him play with other creative players, and I think Donato is a kind of a creative player. We've talked about him being the only guy on the team that wants to go out and create offense for himself and do those things, drive to the net and all that stuff that Beniers can work with.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why we're seeing a little bit more chemistry. Obviously, they knew each other from before, the Boston connection, and
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff. But I think that those are the types of things to look out for. And I think when they're targeting someone in free agency, that's something that they have to keep in mind, is that you need somebody, if you want them to play with this guy who's probably going to end up being your number one center. If you're targeting a number one wing, maybe you should make sure that they can operate together.
Right. And that's something that maybe the Kraken didn't as concretely have to think about before these last couple games with Beniers, because he's still an unknown quantity at the NHL level. And you're just thinking, oh man, we need some goal scoring. I don't care how it has to be done, but we just need a finishing winger, right?
Mm-hmm.
And now that's something you have to take into account a little bit more. Okay, well, what type of finishing winger? Because now you got a pretty good idea who he's going to play with for the long term. If you're going to go with someone who's on your top line. I do agree with you on the fit about Eberle, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it from the start when you have Beniers as still an unknown quantity in the NHL, like before he played any games. I'm talking about you haven't
Yeah.
seen him in NHL action, and Eberle seems to me like the equivalent of training wheels. That
Yeah.
you're going to give him, as you go out there and you've got this bike and you don't know for sure what kind of bike you have. It could be, the Schwinn that you grew up riding, or it could be, this like racing motorcycle and you don't know for sure what it is. So you're going to put the training wheels on it just to be sure. But when it turns out you got this really high performance bike, the training wheels don't look like the best fit there. So I do agree with you. Donato, I mean, we've seen the chemistry there a little bit. Like you look at, Beniers' first point, that pass across to Donato. Donato kind of holds back a little bit, finds this soft spot all the way across the ice. I mean, that's a play where, and you could call it just the chemistry, that they played together before, where you have to know that Beniers or whoever the player is over there who's making the pass is going to be able to see you, because that's a hard read to make. And you've got to know that he's either going to have a lot of creativity there or just kind of know you're going to be there because you know each other. So that's why I'm okay with Donato, for the time being. But you'll definitely see other players kind of build that chemistry too.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we've talked about the two big free agency names all year, RJ Forsberg and Gaudreau. Um, I think realistically, I think both of them could play with Beniers. I don't know that it's like oh, we have to kind of like lay off one and maybe focus on the other.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, could you imagine the creativity of Beniers with the creativity of Gaudreau?
I know. Gaudreau definitely, between the two on paper, that fit is incredible. And as much as I was not impressed by, I think I've watched 3 full games of Johnny Gaudreau over the last week and haven't been all that impressed. But still, the creativity is undeniable, and putting him together with the Matty Beniers, just the plays that they would come up with and create, we'd have a whole highlight reel package.
Yeah, and sometimes those don't work out the way that you think they would. Like maybe they're just creative in the different ways or whatever. But I do feel like Gaudreau this year, and maybe that's why he hasn't signed an extension with Calgary. He's been in a situation where his line mates aren't necessarily super creative. Now it's obviously one of the most effective lines in hockey. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's no way around that. But in a Sutter off style offense and system, there's not as much room for stuff like that. And Brady Tkachuk's a young player. He's got levels of creativity. Like I said, almost all the young players do. And Lindholm, kind of the same thing. But again, they're also very much system players that can take advantage of working within a system. And I feel like Gaudreau is sometimes an odd man out when watching them. Like, you know what I mean? Like they're
Right.
moving in a unit sometimes, and he's maybe left behind one or two times because he's trying to do something, and they're just no, we're doing this instead, and it's like okay.
Yeah, I think actually that does a good job of describing what I've seen over these, I think, 3 games that I've watched this week. It seems like they've got their own, Kachuk and Lindholm have their own thing going, and Gaudreau's trying to have his own thing going. And yeah, it doesn't always work.
Yeah. All right. So I think, on some level he can play with anybody. I think that's not going to be an issue, and it's going to be interesting. The other thing that I want to bring up though,
Hmm.
put Jared McCann on his wing.
I was going to ask you who you would prefer putting with him.
They have instant chemistry as we saw last night on those power plays and stuff. Like anytime they were on the ice together, it was obvious that they can think the same way. And realistically, if you're the Kraken, you're looking at this situation. If you want McCann to see significant ice time, he can't be a center
No, no, he
because
can't. I mean, you look at what else you've got at the position, it just doesn't work that way.
yeah, Beniers is going to be your number one center by the end of next year. You've got Yanni Gord kind of locked into that second center spot, which makes all the sense in the world. I don't want him moved or anything. Do you really want to force Jared McCann in as your third center, especially if you start going to more of a traditional rotation where that means his minutes are going to get cut?
Yeah, no, certainly if you go more toward traditional ice time, I'd like to see it in a playoff series just because, like, how do you match that down the
Yeah.
middle? But not during the regular season.
Yeah. And I also feel like McCann at times has been more effective on the wing.
Yeah, certainly it allows him freedom offensively that he doesn't have when he's playing center, and you can
Mhm.
tell he takes a lot of the defensive responsibility seriously when he's playing up the middle. And so yeah, it does kind of take the leash off him a little bit, and he's capable of doing great things when you do that.
Yeah. So, I guess for right now, my ideal line mates for him would be McCann Donato. If you could make that work with the sides that they're playing on and everything.
Yeah,
Because right, McCann's been mostly on the left side. Donato's been kind of all over the place.
he
It
has.
seems
That's
like.
the thing. He's played left. He's played right. I think you could make it worse. I mean, you could make it work. Thank you. Wow.
Yeah.
So you could make it could be a lot worse than that. But you could certainly make it work. Yeah. Put Donato on the right side. Put McCann on the left side. That'd be pretty cool to watch. And it's not like McCann's anywhere else right now that's a permanent fixture. I mean, they just put him on the Yanni Gord line.
Mhm.
Basically as an experiment. Hakstol flat out said, like, this is an experiment. This might last one period. It might last longer. We'll see how it goes. So, he's not attached anywhere. I do think that would be a good way to go.
Yeah, and I only mention them because we all know Victor Rask is probably the best bet, best match for Beniers with those sick passes he had last night. But nobody seems
Oh,
to want
here
to
we
keep.
go.
So I won't push this narrative for even though it would do very well for the YouTube algorithm as everybody's leaving all these comments about it.
Yep, Dylan, I know you're going to stand by Victor Rask forever. But I mean, hey, he's rewarding you at least recently. It was a good pass to Morgan. He's doing some good things.
He's doing a lot of good stuff. He's been playing well. Um, all right. I mean, is there anything else you want to talk about with Beniers? Like I feel like we kind of touched on the big things that I wanted to bring up.
Yeah, I mean, I I do want to talk about the idea of him kind of being a sponge too, and it's not to like throw more praise on him. I mean, we've done so much of that. I kind of also want to, praise more his teammates with this, but you've seen a lot of his teammates kind of take him under their wing and try and impart some wisdom, some tips, things like that. And you spotted it at actually at the end of morning skate before last game. Yanni Gord staying on the ice with him late there to work with him on face-offs, on some net front positioning. And Beniers talked about wanting to be a sponge, soak up all this information, and learn. And it seems like he's committed to that. And it seems like his teammates are committed to helping him with that.
Yeah, and again, these are the hallmarks of great players. Look at all the top players of this last generation, the Ovechkins, the Crosbys, the Stamkos. There's just tons and tons of stories of them being that way when they were young with the older players, and then as they aged and developed, working on things to round out their game. The stories of Stamkos and Crosby, right? Okay, I'm like 23, I'm a center, face-offs. I need to be better. If I'm going to be getting these ice times and these assignments, I need to be better on face-offs. They spend a whole off season working on face-offs. They come out, they're like top 5 guys. You know what I mean? Like, or Crosby with his shot, or Ovechkin with the defensive parts of his game. Like, there was a point where Ovechkin was like, okay, I guess I have to kind of, pay attention defensively if I want to get out of the second round of the playoffs. You know what I mean? Like,
Mm-hmm.
there are moments where all these guys kind of hit a wall at some point, and they have to adjust if they want to continue that trajectory of being one of the best in the league and of their team being a super competitive team. Because at the end of the night, if you're going to be out there 20 minutes plus for your team, you better be sure that you're going to make the best use of that time. You're out there for a third of the game. You better make sure that you're going to win that third of the game. And so it's encouraging that Beniers already has that. We already know he's got the work ethic and the hustle and everything, but again, to have the smarts and the willingness to learn and work on that stuff, you just know a couple years from now he's going to be like those guys where he's going to pick a part of his game and focus on it over the off season, and next thing you know, it's going to be great. I guess he already did this last year with his offensive part of the game and especially his shot.
Exactly. And he had a lot of good players on that Michigan team, to learn from, to talk to. And I think, he's going to have those pieces, in Seattle. I mean, whether you want to pick up, defensive aspects of your game from Yanni Gord, I mean, who better to learn that from? The shutdown part of the game, he's going to have, there should be someone to learn faceoffs from at some point, you would hope.
Already pretty good at it, though.
Yeah.
Last night he was good.
Yeah, and he might be the one teaching guys pretty soon. Jared McCann with his shot. I mean, Beniers already has a pretty good shot, but why not see what Jared McCann does, where his release is so good? See if you can incorporate something like that. Or whoever they sign. You bring in a Johnny Gaudreau. Imagine the kind of things that you could bounce off each other there. But it's just this recipe to keep getting better, and that's what the greatest players do. So encouraging to see that very early on, and from his teammates being willing to do that too, because it takes both sides. It really does. You need to have teammates that are willing to help you out.
Yeah, and oh man, if he can learn some of the stuff from McCann about his shot.
Mm-hmm.
I've only been to one Kraken practice all year because I've been to a couple morning skates, but I only went to one back in November when I was up here. And I just remember everybody left and McCann was still out there working on his shot. And he had all sorts of drills for it too. Like, it is something that Jared McCann really works on. And so yeah, if Beniers decides to hang out with him for a little while and do those same drills and stuff, like, oh man,
Look
that's
out.
gonna be so scary. Yeah. Oh, good stuff. Yeah, I just can't say enough good stuff about Beniers.
Yep.
All right, so I know there was something else though from the Kraken that you wanted to bring up
Yes.
that we've seen these last couple of games.
Yeah, and it's an adjustment that I've really liked, and it started with the second Calgary game, the one in Calgary on the road. So that would be 2 games ago, and that is active D. The Kraken defense has all of a sudden, I mean, I know they've been active, to an extent all season, but they took it to another level in that Calgary game. I mean, no hesitation, jumping up into the play. saw any kind of opportunity, just go for it. You had defensemen, down around the face-off dots by the goal line regularly. It seemed like every shift, at least once in the offensive zone, you saw that happening. From Vince Dunn and Adam Larson, probably most of all. I mean, he looked like a rover in that game, just going everywhere, and he was rewarded with a goal too. Carson Soucy, a big part of that. But it was, I thought, a really clever coaching adjustment from Dave Hakstol against a Flames team where they're gonna outstructure you. They're they're gonna work really hard. They are more skilled than you are. They're division leaders. You have to do something different to throw them off balance. And for 40 minutes, it really did. And I think in the third period, the problem was they stopped doing that too. They didn't do it consistently enough. And they kind of sat back a little bit, tried to protect their lead, and then the lead goes away. But I really like that adjustment. I think you saw it a little bit also in the Devils game. Again, not as consistently as maybe with Calgary, but you definitely saw the defensemen more willing to activate, and you saw it on a pair of goals too, from Will Borgen and from Carson Soucy. And now all of a sudden you've got the defensemen just scoring goals in bunches.
Exactly, and you bring up such an excellent point, and it has been a fantastic adjustment. And really, the thing about it in the Devils game was it went away too. Like they just, for whatever reason, later in games they get nervous about it, maybe, or yeah, they're just trying to protect the lead. But again, maybe this is one of those new age NHL things. It's not like the old days where you can protect a lead by clutching and grabbing guys and just leveling everybody as they come into the zone. You have to stay aggressive if you want to make sure you win a hockey game in the NHL these days. The only way to win is to outscore your opponent, and so you got to kind of keep your foot on the gas, and that would be my one thing to say about it as far as that's concerned. But yes, we are seeing that the Kraken have defensemen that can shoot the puck. They can pick corners. They can come down and just bury it when they want to. And we're finally seeing them given the freedom to do that beyond just the nights where Adam Larson decides, hey, I'm just taking over this period for a second and I'm going to make sure I score a goal. Or you know what I mean? But we're seeing it now. Carson Soucy, wasn't that his 10th of the year?
It was 10th goals. Yeah. That's tied for, I think, 5th on the team.
Right. And you have that, and he's been, second, third pairing kind of guy for you this year. And so to have like this range of guys, Borgen getting it done, seeing how great his shot was, granted it was a sick dish from Victor Rask, but
yeah.
Seeing how good his shot was and how he was able to do that. This is your weapon. This is your offense. Like the offense that you've been struggling to create all year. This is what it is, whether you like it or not. It is what it is, and I'm happy that the Kraken have figured it out. Given that a lot of these guys are going to be back next year, they're going to be kind of running it back. So I want to see this be a consistent thing, but most importantly, I want it to be something that they keep through an entire game.
Exactly.
Just keep your foot on the gas. If you have the lead, you go for it. If you're losing, you go for it, because what do you have to lose at that point? But if you have a lead, just know that in today's NHL, you can't protect a lead the way you used to.
Mm-hmm.
You can't flood the ice during the second intermission with the Zamboni to slow it down. You can't clutch and grab. You can't just maul guys anymore. You can't cross-check them from behind in front of your crease endlessly the way you used to. Like, all that stuff's been taken away. So I really think that your best defense is a good offense at this point.
Exactly. Well said. And what have you got to lose at this point in the season? I mean, you get too aggressive, you get burned, and you've blown a lead. Guess what? That's happened to you before. Guess what? It's not going to cost you a playoff spot. Just stick with it. See what you can do. And I agree. I'd like to see it, going forward. It's something that teams haven't really had an answer for yet. I mean, we'll see if other teams now kind of see that on the pre-scout and make adjustments. But, so far, so good. It's worked. And they've got the personnel to do it. I mean, you look at the Kraken, the forwards are not going to force the issue offensively by themselves. Given the forwards you have, they're just not capable of doing that. You have to be involved as a 5-man unit, which I know we hear that a lot, from the coaching over the course of the season, but like, it really is true. You have to be involved with all five skaters, because the three forwards just aren't going to be able to do it by themselves. So I like that adjustment, and credit to Hakstol when it's due. He could have just done nothing and not really tweaked that at all. But credit to the coaching staff there.
Exactly. And two more things on this. One, we'll get to a fun thing in a sec that I want to do. But before that, just to stay on the Hacksaw point, the morning skate I was at yesterday before that Devils game, they did have a drill that was basically 4-on-0s, two forwards and two defensemen going in on a goaltender, and they were just doing that, and a lot of it was built around passing it back to the defenseman to kind of pick the corner. Like the wingers would go, or the forwards would go to the sides and dish it back to the defensemen that were coming deep into the zone. And at first I was like, what the heck is this drill for, other than just picking apart your goaltenders and giving them like no confidence? Because you're just 4-on-0s, of course they're going to score a bunch. But I think that was their way of just kind of getting that in, and building the muscle memory for the defensemen to go to those spots, and for the forwards to, hey, it's okay to dip low and give yourself a horrible shooting angle, because really you're going to kick it out to these guys who are then going to be in the slot essentially, because that's really where they're starting to be almost.
Yeah, they're
They're
coming in
almost,
really deep.
yeah. And so I think the next level of that is go ahead and throw maybe a defender or two out there. Like let's get them to work around somebody maybe. But it is something that the coaching staff is working on in that sense.
Oh man, that I'm not surprised at all to hear that. But I mean, good that they're working on it. But that has been one of my complaints all season: is so many blank on O drills.
Yeah.
Just throw a defender in there, throw some opposition, because guess what? There's going to be that during the game.
Yeah.
Early in the season, I understood it more, but yeah, but good observation there from Morning Skate.
Yeah. No, and don't worry, everybody. They're still working on plenty of breakout drills. No zone entry drills, even though that's the thing that's still killing them. How about that for Matty? Just to come back around to Beniers. He enters the zone and he just sucks in defenders, and then he just makes a miss, or he'll do something. The one time they tried to get savvy on him, he just pulls that move where he hits the line and he turns around to protect the puck. Like, he is the answer to all of their we can't enter the zone problems.
Completely, and he's so good at drawing defenders to himself and just instantly spotting the open guy once he does. And that's a skill. That really is drawing people to yourself, making them kind of respect what you can do. Just great to see it, because no one else kind of commands that on the Kraken, really.
No, and to have that be so obvious in your second NHL game is crazy too. That a
Oh yeah.
team is going to give you that much respect, that tells you really everything. It tells you more than anything you and I could say about it.
At
Um,
19, Dylan, at only 19.
only
No one
19.
respects anyone at 19.
No, never. Um, yeah. So the last thing I want to talk about, I want to bring this up, impromptu RJ, because
Okay.
now we've seen so many of these defensemen activate. We have to rank who's got the best shot.
Ooh, okay.
Like
Okay.
who's your favorite? The one that when they activate and they come down, and the feed is ready from Victor Rask, and you're just like, oh, something special's gonna happen here. You know what I mean?
Ooh, that's
Like,
good.
like who tops that list for you? Obviously, I have to legally say Adam Larson for myself,
Hmm.
but like Carson Soucy is not he's not far behind.
Yeah, Susie was actually going to be the name I was going to bring up there. Susie's definitely the one that I think, oh, I get excited. Larson, too, though. I mean, Adam Larson has been great this season. Um, let's see. I don't really get excited about Alexiak in that situation. More when I see him like almost go and try to forecheck.
He's the odd man out in the sense that this isn't his style at all.
No, it's really not. Not the fit for him at all. Um, Will Borgen, and I know there's some recency bias there, but he's got a heck of a slap shot. As you saw in that game, he can just laser it. It doesn't happen a whole lot. It doesn't happen very often. But if he can step into a shot like that, if you get that perfect Victor Rask pass for him,
Mhm.
he can just absolutely wire it. And we see that consistently, like in practice and whatnot.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, because I noticed it during the morning skate, like and I remember this from November too. He's so accurate with it, and it's
Hmm.
such a weird shot. If you watch the puck, like the puck basically stands up and then just flies through the air like face first. Like it makes no sense, but like that's just how the puck flies off his stick. It's kind of crazy. Go back and look at some of his goals, everybody. Like they just hit the back of the net, just the full face of the puck hits the back of the net. It's really strange. It's funny to see. You get some weird sort of drag on it. I don't know. But he can pick corners like nobody else. Like him and Susie are the two that I feel like have by far and away the best accuracy with their, one timer.
Which is what you need in that situation.
Right. Larson is maybe the heaviest in game.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all know how the hardest shot contest went for him and everything previously, but like as far as game speed, it looks the hardest. Certainly the one that makes the loudest sound if it misses the net, which he does quite a bit. He doesn't have the accuracy of the other two, I will say that. But his is certainly exciting. The one that's crazy, RJ, is we've literally mentioned four names, mentioning Alexiak. No Vince Dunn.
I know, but it just that's not the situation. I mean, he kind of needs to be, like moving across the blue line. It's got to be a wrist shot, not a one timer. He's got to kind of pick his corner from there, and like he's good at putting it through traffic there, but not when he's got that clean shot. I don't know. It's just not his situation.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting. And then Hayden Fleury, we've seen him be successful with things. I think now that he's back, it might take a couple games. It looked like he was still kind of getting back into the swing of things last night. That being said, he was okay. Um, I just don't know that he'll be fully down for this year, just given the limited amount of time left.
Right. And speaking of a Flurry here, there's one one defenseman who, like, it's not that situation where he's stepping into a slap shot, but maybe it's like the 4-on-0 where it's dropped back to him, but call it a 4-on-1 or 4-on-2 or whatever. But on the rush where, he gets that pass, and I'm thinking more a wrist shot than a slap shot, but like Cale Fleury's actually been pretty good at picking corners I've seen in practice, and especially through some traffic. Since he's come back up, usually every practice he's got one or two where, you hear a ping and they're like, oh man, and you see who it was, and it was Cale Fleury. So interested if you see that from him in a game at any point.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times he's been really focused this go around on the defensive aspects of his game.
Which makes sense.
And yeah, and I feel like he's kind of got that same thing as Beniers, where he's playing a little cautious when he's out there. And again, it's not the worst thing in the world to play responsibly. It really isn't. But when it comes to something like this, it means we're not going to see his full ability on display.
Yeah. So hopefully he kind of, again, grows into that confidence and we see a little bit more. But just so you know, he's got it in him.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. How could he not? It makes sense, right? Because that's the way like brothers and siblings always are. Is like one's always good at something that the other one isn't. Hayden Fleury's got the slap shot. Cale's got the wrister.
Exactly. That's brothers. That's how it works.
It's how genetics work. It just is. We all know it. Just it's been a fun, interesting week of Kraken hockey, RJ.
It sure has. Certainly been an interesting week for the two of us, covering Kraken hockey in the ways that we have.
Yep. It's the way it is, but I think everything's been working out okay.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, you came up here and everyone's been in good hands with your coverage. So it's been great.
Thanks, appreciate that. You've been killing it in your own way too. You're killing COVID. That's the most important.
I would say that's the only way I've killed is the COVID. Yeah, but working my way back, feeling better every day.
Yeah, no, and it's you're getting to see it can be fun, but it's a lot of work to do those post games.
Oh yeah, no, I so much respect, and I love that you tweeted out before the game started. Just RJ's running post game, so who knows how it'll go. And then of course we've got stuff hitting the fan and all that.
I'm not trying to jinx anything, and I'm not saying anything because it is a really rewarding position to be in. Like obviously doing all the media availability stuff, I don't get to do any of the in-person stuff, which is unfortunate right now. But running the post games is so much fun just because it is that peak level of community interaction. And I know how much that's meant to both of us. And so I am happy that you kind of get, your time with everybody just to yourself.
Yeah. No, and I definitely do enjoy that aspect of it. It's nice to kind of be able to interact with everyone right after the game. Like, whoa, okay, here we go. Let's talk about it right now. And you know, everyone. Even though I will say, as I was like, struggling for oxygen at the 40-minute mark, I'm like, all right, we can have Dylan now. Dylan, come on, come on.
I know Beniers would not go to the podium. I don't blame him.
Hey, he's a busy kid. He's got lots of stuff to do.
He had to go see his genetic clone of a brother.
Yes. Yeah, we haven't even talked about that.
All those jokes about cloning Jared McCann back at the beginning of the year were striatic all along. Apparently, it's just existed in the Beniers family.
Yeah, the work's already been done. I mean, just go get him some hockey equipment.
Exactly. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, everybody. That's going to do it for this episode of the Deep Dive. Appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to it, and just all the get well messages both of us have received as we've been going through our respective difficulties, and everybody's understanding as things have been a little bit different this past week, just with the sicknesses and the travel that I've had to do and everything. Appreciate all the patience everybody's had for us, and it's just been awesome to be up here and experience the Kraken, but also experience meeting some of you guys. And I hope to do more of that as this week goes on. Should be a lot of fun. And with that, we're going to go ahead and finish this episode. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And we'll see you next time.